Welcome to the Fit Rich Life podcast, a show where we talk about money, fitness, and life mastery, along with the entrepreneurial and financial independence journey, mindset, and much more. In today's special guest episode, I get to interview Justin, the man behind Root of Good, a financial independence retire early blog. Justin achieved financial independence within only 10 years at the age of 33 and has been officially retired for the last 10 years. I've been following Justin's journey since I first discovered the concept of financial independence and early retirement back in 2014. In this episode, here are some of the things that you will learn. 1, how Justin became financially independent in only 10 years and retired at age 33 with 3 kids. 2, how Justin gets $10,000 worth of free travel every year. 3, what Justin has been doing during his retirement over the last 10 years. 4, how, when, and why to utilize the Roth Conversion Ladder, and a whole lot more. This is a great show for anyone interested in pursuing financial independence, as Justin and his wife show us that even someone with an average income can achieve financial freedom in a pretty short amount of time with the right mindset. Please enjoy a wide-ranging conversation with Justin from the Root of Good blog. Justin, welcome to the show, brother. Good to have you.
Thanks, Dragon. Glad to be here.
So to kick the show off, I want you to share the story of how you got fired from your last job 10 years ago.
Well, I guess it was a good day and a bad day in a way. The good part is it led to early retirement on purpose. You know, that was my plan all along. The bad part is, of course, it was a very big shock for about 20 minutes until it really set in that I'm probably okay. So I packed my stuff up in a cardboard box, walked out the door, had my boss escort me out, kind of the walk of shame. But lots of people were getting the same thing right around the same time. So we kind of knew what was going to happen. And it wasn't a huge surprise, but it was still a shock in that moment that, oh my gosh, I don't have a job anymore. What am I going to do now? So put my stuff in my trunk. And as I was driving home, I started thinking, I've got plans for this. I've got spreadsheets. Let me go check those and double check, make sure I'm good. And within a couple hours, I ran the numbers and I was like, all right, I'm 100%. I'm good. I don't have to worry about working anymore. I'm very confident in my math. I'm confident in what I've saved up. It was over $1 million at the time. The mortgage was almost paid off, So I was feeling pretty good. And 10 years later, it all worked out.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, were they doing like company-wide layoffs or why were you originally fired?
Yeah, it was state government, but I was one of those weird appointed employees that didn't have to go through the normal hiring and firing process. So it was very kind of a at will. They could take me or leave me, any moment I could get let go. And there was a new governor in the administration, and I guess they were cleaning house and they wanted to put in their own people. So they got rid of my boss and then the next guy in line and then me and some of my coworkers. And so pretty much by the time I was gone, there was hardly anybody there that was left from the original few folks that worked there 3 years earlier when I started. So just a regular house cleaning.
Yeah. And prior to, kind of the surprise fire or losing your job, how much longer were you planning on working up until you, decided yourself to pull the trigger?
Yeah, I probably would have worked for another year or two. Just piling on the money. It was easy enough work. And I figured, I could just keep working. I think I had planned on something like 16 more months of work probably. But I was close enough when I got let go. I did the math and I was like, all right, I'm good. I'm solid.
I love it. Well, let's rewind back to kind of the beginning of your financial independence journey. I'd love to know how you first kind of discovered it or decided to start pursuing it. If you could take us back to the origin story.
Yeah, it was. I was at work one day trying to figure out something tax related for my personal finances, and I think I stumbled on some early retirement forum. This was actually, I believe, before Facebook even existed, probably back in 2000, or at least before I knew it existed, 2004, 2005. And I found this tax technique to help me withdraw money from my investments, my retirement accounts before age 60. And that's when I started realizing, wait, there's these people that are doing this early retirement thing. And I was like, that's kind of what I've been thinking about doing, but I never knew it was this concept that other people are also pursuing. And so I started reading more on the internet and seeing these other people that are doing early retirement and have done it, even a decade earlier. Um, and that all slowly accumulated knowledge in my head of, okay, this is possible. There's a route to it before. It's called the financial independence retire early movement, fire movement. So I can do this too. It's just a matter of math, devoting the time and energy to save money, invest it properly, and let it grow over a decade or two, however long it takes you.
I'm curious, what was the conversation like with your wife
Mm-hmm.
when you presented this to her? Was she like on board, or was there some cajoling that you had to do? Walk us through that.
I think at first she was probably interested, and then she probably was like, "Shut up! I'm so tired of hearing this." But I don't think I don't think the reality was really there for her in the early years because it's slow going. The first several years, you're putting money in a 401k. You're not seeing a lot of growth on it. You're seeing 10% a year or whatever, but 10% of a small number is still a small number. Uh, Several years into saving and investing, you're starting to see the snowballing effects of those early few years of savings. They're growing more. You're still putting more money in, and the amount that it grows by each year is increasing over time as well. So I think as the numbers of in our net worth started going up, to 500,000 and then approaching 1 million, that's really when I think the reality of this is a lot of money. We've managed to save quite a bit of money as just two normal, ordinary people. This financial independence thing may actually work out. So I think she became increasingly convinced that it was an attainable goal as we got closer to the finish line.
I love it. Um, Originally, when you first started down this path, how long did you think it would take you?
I just found this in my spreadsheet I was updating at the end of the year, and it was actually going to be this year, 2024. So I thought it was going to take me about 20 years in total. And I had written down I need $2.5 million. And this is a spreadsheet I've been updating for 20 years at the end of each year for my net worth. And so that was my plan, in 2004. The plan was save 2.5 million within 20 years. And at some point I refined the numbers and figured out I probably didn't need 2.5 million. And it would not take me 20 whole years to get to what I did need. So, that was how I started out thinking. And so, but I think it's a good point you need to have a number in mind and a goal and figure out, what's it going to take to get there and work towards it. Because even if you refine your plans later and you need less time or more time, it's better to start working towards something early on instead of just kind of aimlessly wandering about and, not having any set goals in mind.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's one of the biggest problems most people have is they don't even have any sort of financial goal in mind. So they're kind of just like aimlessly working towards, whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas the people who have some sort of financial goal, they actually manage their money proactively to get towards it. Um, so I think one, having some sort of goal, and two, kind of in my experience of talking with a lot of different people pursuing financial independence, is it seems to take way less time than people originally anticipate once they kind of get started on the journey.
Yeah, I think it's true. And I think part of that is just, if you're realistic about it, you might tend to set conservative assumptions in what you're what you're able to do and what you're aiming for. At least I have. I mean, I wasn't setting a stretch goal of 20 years. I thought realistically, based on some reasonable assumptions, it'd take me 20 years. And then, of course, most things worked out a little bit better than I thought they did. So that just sort of compounded to get me to that end goal a lot quicker. And a lot of it's just lack of knowledge. I mean, when I was, this was 20 years ago, I didn't know, you don't know how things are going to turn out 20 years in the future. But you gotta work towards something. You gotta work with what you have, and you can refine your assumptions, refine your goal as you go along based on new information. I think that's the biggest thing is, start early, be flexible, and make refinements when you need to.
Yeah. So originally when you retired, you were 33, correct?
Yes. Correct.
And so I'm like, you basically started thinking about this at 23, which, in my own experience, like I was a fucking mess at 23. Like, I'm like, how did you actually, like, what do you think were the reasons why you were actually like focused on this at such a young age? Cause I feel like a lot of people really don't even start to like think about their money until their 30s or mid 30s.
Yeah. I mean, I guess part of it, I settled down, bought a house, got married, had kids relatively early for my college educated peers. So I guess just a natural, you kind of settle down and then start thinking about other things. I don't know why it clicked for me. I mean, I've seen people, 16, 18, 20-year-olds where it clicks even more than how it clicked for me. Now I was operating back almost in the pre-internet days. There was no real social media. And so it was more of just, you had to kind of, find the right book or find the right people, bump into them in person and start thinking about those kind of things. Today I think it is a lot easier to find those communities online or the information online where you can at least see what's out there, what's potentially available to you in terms of options for saving, investing, financial independence, that kind of thing. So, a little bit less of an excuse to not have the knowledge today. I don't, maybe we can address later, is it easier or harder for people, young people today to reach financial independence versus people from 20 years ago? That may be a different topic, but it's just amazing, looking at what's changed now in terms of technology 20 years later. Just so much more out there, good and bad, some of the information is not the best. And so you can be led astray just as easy, but it's easier to connect with people online now, so much easier than 20 years ago. So hopefully this generation can pick up some of the tools and tricks a little bit quicker than my generation.
Yeah. I mean, my personal opinion is it's a lot easier today, just in the sense that there's so much more information and available, like tools and strategies and content that people have created around all of this. Would you agree, or you think it was easier back then?
I think it's easier now. I mean, there's, for me, I just kind of had to start reading. There wasn't even really blogs, back in the early 2000s. Not that I mean, there was one or two, but, now there's tons of them. You can find who you identify with and then follow them. There's social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, probably some of them not even on yet. The blogs themselves, YouTube channels, your podcast. I mean, I don't even think podcasts were that big way back, in ancient history, 25 years ago now.
Yeah.
So there's just, you can identify the channels that you enjoy taking information through and subscribe to the right people and read the right blogs or books, read on the go. There's so many more ways to get information today.
Yeah. I'm curious, like way back then, like 2004, how did you develop your investing strategy?
I went and looked at several different model portfolios and just picked the one that I thought made the most sense for long term. And it's just basically just index funds, low cost. Read a couple of books on it, or several books back then. I don't really read a lot about finance anymore, but at the time I researched a lot of the thinking on active management versus passive management, tax efficiency. How do how do investments in stocks, how do they generate long-term earnings? Like, why do they do that? Just to help understand fundamentally what's the best approach to invest for multiple decades. And my conclusion was, well, index funds are pretty easy for me. I don't want to spend a lot of time on my investments. I'm not a stock picker. I'm not a professional stock analyst. Just pick something simple and stick with it, and keep investing month after month. And that's what resonated with me, and it worked out. It worked out pretty well in hindsight.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to mention is, I was looking at your blog this morning, Root of Good, for all the listeners who are interested in checking out your content, which you have a ton of awesome content just about the journey, about, post-fire life. You do essentially a monthly update at this point. And I believe you're currently at a 2.8 million net worth, somewhere
Yeah,
around there.
almost three. I think I was just below three at some point in December, but I haven't published that update yet. So
Which to me is crazy because your original goal was 2.5 million by 2024, but you stopped working 10 years ago and you still hit it.
yes, yeah. It's essentially our investments have roughly doubled over the last decade, which is if you look at historical returns, investments tend to double about every decade. So we're just spending such a small percentage of our portfolio each year that just natural stock market returns. I wouldn't be surprised to see our portfolio continue to double every 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing. And I think that's one of the things that people don't really comprehend, the power of compounding interest, and just like the power of it over the years. I'm curious, like in the first few years of your financial independence or fire journey, you know, how were you thinking about optimizing your expenses, your earning, and like actually, putting money into the market? Because it seems like a lot of people, they kind of tend to suffer from lifestyle creep.
Yeah. I guess for me, it was a little bit easier in a way because I figured all this financial independence journey stuff out right after college. And so I essentially kind of never really inflated to this like gigantic, common American middle class lifestyle with tons and tons of stuff and tons of cars and big house and all that. So early on, I kind of was said, okay, I don't really value a lot of that stuff all that much anyway. So do I want to work until I'm 60 and have a little bit nicer stuff and a little bit bigger house and maybe another car? Or do I want to be able to retire 25 or 30 years earlier? And to me, the answer was obvious. I don't want to work an extra couple of decades just so I can have, a few more square feet and an extra fancy car in the driveway. That just didn't make sense to me. Now, if that resonates with you, then that's okay too. You can set goals to have all that stuff as well. But for me, it was just easy to never have to deflate the lifestyle because I never really inflated it. I bought a starter house and ended up saying, you know what, I'm happy enough here. Let me just stick with this and make improvements here where I'm at, and then enjoy my free time more than an extra 1,000 square feet or 5-car garage or something.
Yeah. So I'm curious, outside of the stock investing or index investing, did you do any sort of real estate investing or any other types of investing that kind of helped you along on your fire journey?
Yeah, I was an accidental real estate investor. I bought a house during college to live in while I was going to school up the road in Chapel Hill, and lived there for 3 years. And then was going to sell it. It never sold, so I rented it out for a few years, and then I sold it after the values went back up. So accidentally became a landlord for a few years. Decided I did not like it that much, and got out, and sold it, and got out of there. So that's pretty much it. Index funds has been the 95% of my net worth growth. I bought my own house here in Raleigh right after college, and it's done pretty well percentage wise. Tripled in value roughly, I think, since 2003 when we bought it. But we lived here for 20 years now, so very low transaction costs, no real transaction costs, buying and selling real estate, moving around a lot, no movers, not paying movers, no closing costs constantly, getting a new mortgage or any of that stuff. So that's definitely helped out, keeping the expenses low, not only just living in a starter home, but not constantly moving every 3 or 4 years to a new home.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge one because really everyone's like three biggest costs are housing, car, and food. And housing is,
Yeah.
the biggest piece of that always for most people, unless they
Yeah.
figure out some way to live less expensively.
For
So
sure.
I'm curious, you did this with three kids. How the heck did you do this with three kids?
Well, I guess they're good tax write-offs. That's one thing, is you do get tax credits and tax breaks for them. Um, I don't know. I did the math on it one time and figured out after all the tax credits that kids aren't too horribly expensive. I mean, they can be. I've seen people. They certainly could be if you let them become expensive, or if you have to pay for childcare for extended periods of time, or private school, and the choices you make. I've heard some people, as soon as they have one kid, they have to go out and get a 7-seater SUV, and I kind of look at that and say, like, I've seen people fit like three kids in the back of a Toyota Camry. And there's actually a website, I think, where somebody talks about what car seats to buy to put three kids in the back of a Toyota Camry. So it's all decisions. There's ways to economize, even if you have three kids, even if you have six kids. I mean, I've seen people that 6 kids, 8 kids, trying to hit financial independence. Now, it's going to be harder to pay for their full ride to college if you have 6 or 8 kids instead of 1 or 2 or 3 kids. But there are benefits. Like my kids are in college now, and because we don't withdraw a lot of money from our investments, our income is relatively low. So with the financial aid formulas now, we look relatively low income on paper. So the kids actually get relatively reasonable financial aid packages. And they went to community college for 2 years before finishing up. Community college is almost free anyway. So that's one way. We try to economize here and there for things that some people spend $25,000 per year on, like college, and it's been almost free for us just because of some choices.
Yeah. I think that's another area where, people with children kind of really mess up financially is they they don't optimize kind of like how they're thinking about money and kids, and they kind of just like, oh, it's for my kids, I'm just gonna like spend whatever it takes, without kind of realizing that there's all these loopholes and strategies that one could take advantage of to like really optimize significantly one's financial expenses when it comes to kids.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it tends to be a little bit of a blind spot for some people. But yeah, and living near family so they can help out some, share responsibility. Having grandparents nearby for free babysitting. Just not having to travel during the holidays. We have both of our sets of family are all here in town, so for us, Christmas and Thanksgiving is easy. We don't have to, we drive 20 minutes down the road or 5 minutes down the road, not a all day flight or all day drive somewhere. But it's just part of our luck in a way that it worked out. We could stay here and work in Raleigh, where both of our families are from.
Yeah. I'm curious, what was your childhood like with money, if you're open to sharing? Like, how did your parents treat money? Did they teach you about money?
Yeah.
What was kind of your financial situation growing up?
Yeah. I think I was pretty well taught about money, early on. I was always good with math. So I guess like it came naturally to me to be able to add things up pretty quickly and calculating like sales tax on how much $5, like what would 7% on that be, that kind of thing. And I think my parents got me some kind of like a little money game set kind of thing where you learn about money. And I always thought it was neat. I liked collecting coins and currency and seeing foreign currency. So I guess it's been a little bit of an obsession for me, even at a young age. Financially, we were middle class growing up, so never had everything, but never had nothing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But we were relatively frugal, so I think I appreciated the value of a dollar growing up, more than some people perhaps. But that was part of it too. And my wife grew up. She's a refugee actually from Southeast Asia originally. So her background's even more modest than mine, and I think that helped us kind of just remain naturally frugal throughout adulthood because we never really had like an upper class existence that we were used to growing up that we felt like we then had to give up going into adulthood. So I could see how it would be harder if you're used to flying first class and luxury cars and, weekend ski trips every weekend. And I don't even know what other like upper class things people do, but all those things we didn't really have growing up. So it's not like we're giving up anything that that we are accustomed to. So I guess that's one of the privileges of poverty in a way, if you want to phrase it that way.
Yeah. I think I'm curious, did you grow up like around like mostly middle class people, or were there also like a lot of wealthy people kind of in your childhood?
Mostly middle class. I mean, we didn't really, I'm trying to think. There was a golf course near our neighborhood, but it wasn't like a private one. I think it was like anybody could join it. But it was just a regular like starter home neighborhood. And then we moved to Raleigh. Well, I lived in Raleigh most of my life, mostly in the same house. And it was, a reasonably nice suburb outside of Raleigh. But it's on the poor side of the suburb, not the really exclusive wealthy part. And we don't come from like old money or anything. That would have been cool, I guess, to have like people that had connections and, they would take me to their private weekend ski trips from the helicopter.
Yeah.
That would be fun. But no, we did a lot of camping growing up. I was in the Boy Scouts and, pretty simple stuff, public schools all the way up through university. So, yeah, I mean, I think there was a show called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and that's where I got my information on wealthy people back then. So I don't know if you've seen that show.
Yeah.
It's like from the 80s or 90s probably, but it was an old British guy was the host, and it was, yeah. But they go to Beverly Hills and like drive fancy cars, and that's how the other half live. Now we have YouTube for that and Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think similar to you, my family was pretty frugal. I would say we were lower middle class. So, money was usually pretty tight. And in my case, it kind of worked in the opposite direction of you, because once I started like making more money, initially I just like spent it all, and I really didn't discover financial independence until my 30s. And when I discovered it, I was like $80,000 in debt, and
Ooh.
just had yeah, so I had to really crawl my way out of it. But what's interesting to me listening to your story is I kind of returned to those like frugal habits and frugal lifestyle that I had as a child growing up. And I actually feel like so I went through a period of like 2 to 3 years of like hardcore frugality in my 30s to kind of like get myself onto the financial independence path. And prior to that, like, I was driving a Range Rover, going out to eat every day, spending, living in a really expensive condo and basically making good money, but then spending beyond that and digging myself into more and more debt. And while that was fun, I would say I had just as much fun or even more fun like in my 30s when I went through like what I call my kind of hardcore frugality period that set
Yeah.
me up to become financially independent. So like listening to your story, I'm like, yeah, actually, like even though I kind of went off the deep end, I was able to return kind of to my roots and like utilize that frugality to really put myself on a powerful financial path. So I think that's one of the things that I have discovered with pretty much most people that reach financial independence at an earlier age is utilizing that power of frugality for some duration of the path to financial independence.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, frugality is one of those like could be one of those taboo words that turns people off to the concept of financial independence. I just saw on Twitter this whole, somebody was like, "Oh, financial independence is such an outdated concept. Who wants to eat beans and rice forever so that you can retire and then just eat beans and rice forever?" Like, I was like, if I look around at my peers that retired early, I mean, if they're eating beans and rice, it's because they want to eat beans and rice because they like it, not because they have to. I mean, most of them are eating plenty of other good stuff alongside of it and doing all kinds of crazy, awesome things. And yeah, sometimes they do frugal things, or it's just, they eat beans because they're healthy or it's easy. Like they don't, they're not trying to, or they'll cook it at home instead of like going out to eat somewhere. It, if you're struggling and sacrificing for frugality and it's a short-term thing to hit a goal, that makes sense. And there's also different levels of frugality where some people really do go off the deep end, like to the point of deprivation. And then, I mean, if you're deep in debt, it may make sense for a few years to really do that, to reboot and get back on a solid footing. That's the Mr. Money Mustache thinking there of like, if you're deep in debt, it's like your hair's on fire. You have to put it out. You can't just like ignore it and pretend it's not an issue.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I think it's all mindset, right? Because I had a ton of fun being frugal for like 2 to 3 years to really like turn my financial situation around. And like, if you think it's gonna suck to be frugal, it's gonna suck. If you think
Yeah.
it could be like a really fun game that you're gonna play to like put yourself in a really strong financial position, like it'll be fun. And it's really like I think money is both math, but it's also mindset, right?
Oh yeah. I think lots of emotions and behavior in it just as much as math and spreadsheets. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, kind of about if you could break down like the different buckets of your money, because I know you're putting money into your 401k. You're probably, I'm guessing investing outside of or above and beyond your 401k during your journey.
Mhm.
Like, walk us through how you kind of thought about like filling up these different buckets and when and how you would access them to, power you through, retiring pretty freaking early.
Yeah. So I always took advantage of my tax deferred, tax preferred accounts, Roth IRA, traditional IRA, 401ks, max those out as much as I could each year because it's kind of a use it or lose it each year. You get one shot at it each year. The next year you get another shot at it. If you can afford to max those out, go for it. I think we're up to like 7,000 in an IRA for 2024 and 23,000 ish for a 401k in 2024, something like that. So pretty high limits now. We're talking $30,000 there to max out both of those accounts per year. Now, $30,000. That's roughly half of what you're going to be making as a brand new college graduate. So if you can keep on living like a poor college student in your first year out of college and max out those accounts, it's going to save you a ton on taxes. And then, you're going to, you're still going to have some spending money. You're not going to be totally broke. Of course, it depends on where you live and how much you're saving. For me, I was lucky. My wife and I both worked, so we were actually more or less saving half our income, maxing out, pretty much every year, maxing out 401ks, maxing out IRAs. Most years we had a good bit of money left over. So what I did was just set up an automatic investment where I would have every month, I would just have another bill taken out of my checking account, and Vanguard would get, I think it was about $1,500 per month for a while, just automatic recurring debit from my account every month, $1,500, and it would just go into whatever ETF or mutual fund I'm trying to invest in that month. Kind of a mindless way of getting around, trying to time the market. Is it up or down or good or bad time? What's going on? Just had the 1,500 taken out and dumped into whatever. And if I, after a few months, maybe that bucket's full, I want to go put it in a different investment, different index fund. And so that helped me a lot, just keeping on track and not having to think about how is the market doing? Where is it headed? Is it a good time? Just having it automatically taken out. Now, if I ever needed the money, let's say for, something kid related, something with the house broke, big car repair or something like that, I could just turn that $1,500 debit, turn it off for a month, and then, or turn it on. In Vanguard, you can check a box and turn it off for 3 or 4 months in a row. And then that would catch me up on my checking account balance where I would have more money in a few months. So it's like, I treat it like a bill because it's important. I want to pay it. But at the same time, in an emergency, you can just turn that off and then, have some extra cash coming in the door. So I think having some kind of like an automated investment process, that's one of the biggest ways I've heard other people that are doing well get towards financial independence. They don't think about it a whole lot. They're not, it's not like a constant thing they have to always worry about. It's more of like, my 401k is getting maxed out. Oh, it's January 1st again. Time to max out the IRA. My HSA is getting maxed out. I've got too much in my checking account. Time to make another sweep to the Vanguard account. I think just having those rules set up in your finances makes it a lot easier to know what to do and actually implement it versus somebody who's and I've seen lots of people that are on the other side that are like, they don't have those systems in place. And then, they have like $100,000 sitting in cash. And you say, well, why do you have that? Or where'd you get it from? And they're like, well, I just, we get paid a lot of money and it just goes into the account. And I don't know. I just hadn't thought about it. And it's like, hey, come on, that's your money, put it to work. So I think figuring out what you're spending and how much you can afford to invest each month and then automating it to the extent possible will make things a lot smoother. And, you don't even have to think about it anymore. It just runs.
Yeah, I think that's critical piece to the financial independence journey is really getting like a system in place that's for the most part fully automated. So, in my own experience, it's like maybe the first few months you're kind of like really like learning, thinking, building the systems. But then after that, it's like, okay, I don't really need to do anything. Let me go focus on other parts of my life. So I'm guessing that's kind of like you in the beginning of your journey, you kind of got everything set up and then you just kind of focused on building a life with your wife and your kids. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and honestly, looking back, I probably dwelled on the little details too much. I mean, I guess I'm sort of an optimizer and like to tweak things and think about things. But at some point, you really are an autopilot and all you can do is just, let the money roll in and keep investing it and then let it grow. But yeah, I mean, it's just at some point it comes down to the time. It's going to take you however many years it takes, depending on your goal and how much you need.
Yeah. So circling back to the 401k and the other investments, like I'm just curious, like, for most people, they can't access their 401k till, 59 and a half. Like, how were you setting yourself up? Because, I mean, you retired at 33. That's a long ways away from 59 and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different ways you can access your retirement funds before 59 and a half, decades early. One of them is called the 72T, substantially equal periodic payments, or SEPP.
Hmm.
That lets you pull out about somewhere around 4% per year of your retirement accounts. But once you start doing it, if you start doing it in your 30s or whenever, you're locked into it. That percentage, you're locked into it. You have to keep pulling it out forever until you hit age 59 and a half. So it's very inflexible, not a very popular technique. More common technique, and one that I'm actually using, is called the Roth IRA Conversion Ladder. What this is basically is, so Roth accounts, you can pull out any contributions to the account that you've made over the years. That's that 7,000 per year that you're putting in there. You can pull those out penalty free, tax free anytime. Conversions are similar. What a conversion is where you have contributed to that traditional 401k or traditional IRA at some point in the past. And then you can take those amounts that are in there now, and it's called a conversion, or sometimes people call it a rollover, but it's really, I think the tax rule is conversion. You convert it from a traditional IRA account to a Roth IRA account. You pay tax on it when you convert it. So if you convert $10,000, that's 10,000 extra dollars of income that year. There's no penalty on it when you convert it, but it goes from the traditional side to the Roth side. So then all of a sudden, that's a new $10,000 Roth conversion amount. There's a 5-year waiting period after you convert, but after that 5-year period, that $10,000 can then come out tax-free, penalty-free from your IRA. And so that is the loophole where you have to plan for it, because it does take 5 years to kind of let it cook and simmer, and then you pull it out. So if you're starting to think like, I'm going to retire at 33, like Justin, okay, how do you do that? Well, you have to figure out how you're going to get the money. If you start doing these conversions after you quit working, when you're in a lower tax bracket, which a lot of people do, how are you going to fund your living expenses from age 33 up to age 38? And then at 38, you start pulling these converted amounts out of your Roth IRA. So a lot of people have taxable savings accounts. Some people, to go to half-time for a few years, half-time employment. Some people will sell a house and move to the lower cost of living area, or do some kind of nomad travel stuff. And then the house proceeds are what they live on for 5 years. For us, it was taxable savings accounts. And we're actually still spending down our taxable savings accounts right now, even a decade into things. But I'm still doing Roth conversions in the background, just because I know, I'm 43 now, so I've still got 16 years before I hit that normal retirement age, and being able to withdraw money without having to worry about penalties. So I'm building up those Roth balances now. In the event that my taxable account ever runs out, I should have plenty of Roth account balance built up, so then I can pull out of that as much as I need to.
Yeah. I think one thing I just want to call out for the audience to make sure this point is driven home is you want to do the Roth conversion when you're in a low tax bracket, because it is taxed as additional income. And because that was one of the things I was thinking through, like, I'm in a fairly high tax bracket right now. So like, it would make zero sense for me to start those conversions. But if I were to, stop, earning, a large amount of money that put me in a high tax bracket, that's when I'd want to start the conversion ladder with that Roth money. So I just want to call that out for the audience. I'm curious also how you're dealing with healthcare in the last 10 years, because that is often like a really big concern for people. Stopping the 9 to 5 is healthcare is so expensive. How I'm going to take care of that. So how have you managed healthcare over the last 10 years?
Yeah. So fortunately, right when I quit working, the Affordable Care Act kicked in. And it's really been, one of the biggest, love it or hate it, it's been one of the biggest innovations that helped out early retirees quite a bit, even freelancers, people that, quit W-2s and started out on their own. So through it, you get a tax subsidy of varying amounts depending on your income bracket. Um, and it helps offset or completely pay for all of your health insurance coverage for the year. And so each year, kind of like people that are employed, you have annual enrollment a lot of times in the fall, and you sign up for a health insurance plan for the following year. Well, I do the same thing through the healthcare.gov, the ACA healthcare exchange online. I put in my information in there, and it's actually pre-filled now, so it only takes about 5 or 10 minutes for me each year now. Plug in my info, my projected adjusted gross income for the next year, and they give me a list of different health plans that I can pick from. And it's pretty similar to regular employer-provided insurance. And again, because my adjusted gross income is relatively low, just because I'm not working, I don't have a big income or anything. I'm not cashing out a lot of investments, so my AGI is relatively modest, and so we get health insurance costs for us have ranged from $0 up to about $125 per month premiums. So pretty modest overall. Part of that's being driven by the fact that we have a family of 5, and they calculate your subsidies based on household size. So you get a lot more of a subsidy the bigger your household is. So if it was just my wife and I, same income level, we would probably be paying a few $100s per month on average, maybe a little bit more than that sometimes. So it just kind of depends on your household size and your income. But for a lot of early retirees, when you're dropping from making 6 figures down to your adjusted gross income might be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, you're going to get a decent subsidy for health insurance.
Yeah. So just to circle back a little bit, because I don't think I drew this out enough for the audience, is okay. Were you and your wife making significant amount of money on your journey to FI? What were you guys doing for work, and how much were you guys making?
So my wife worked for a bank, and I was an engineer, but civil engineer, so one of the lesser paid engineers out there. We capped out our salaries, both topped out just over $70,000 per year. Now this was 10 years ago, so probably 85, maybe 90,000 per year in 2024 dollars. So we never individually made 6-figure incomes, even adjusting them up for inflation today. Very reasonable incomes, very, very good incomes in the grand scheme of things, but certainly not your 1%er incomes, not massive high. We barely paid any federal taxes because we had kids back then. So it's pretty normal college graduate incomes. We worked 40 hours a week. We weren't pulling 60 or 70, 80 hours a week working. It was just relatively low expenses, relatively simple lifestyle, and a decent, solid income, consistent over the years, but never anything massive.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your story because it's just like, it really showcases that like this is possible for like a pretty average American person, as long as you're just intentional about your money. You can do it in as little as 10 years, and if you get started in your 20s, I mean that literally means you have the option to retire in your 30s, which is 25 or so years before the traditional retirement age. So I think it's a really inspirational story, and it gives a lot of people permission and courage to like actually pursue this, because I think a lot of people who don't think through this or somehow miss kind of the financial independence movement, they just assume they're going to have to work till 59 and a half, potentially doing work that they don't really want to be doing.
Yeah, it's certainly true. I mean, and even if you don't want to retire super early in your 30s, if you kind of enjoy what you're doing, well, keep in mind that you may not always enjoy what you're doing, or your career may become obsolete for some reason, or you may just hate it for some reason, or medical issues pop up, or life issues pop up. You just can't do what you used to do, and so that's another thing. To have a plan B of, hey, I don't have to work. It's a pretty nice backup plan. So even if you think you love what you're doing and you're going to do it forever, it may not be a bad idea to still save a few bucks just in case you want to do something different someday.
Yeah. In my own experience, what happened is, I discovered financial independence and I went after it and I achieved it around 37, and I'm 41 now. But when I achieved financial independence, it actually made me like fall back in love with my work because it was optional. Like I didn't have to do it. And I was like, holy shit, this is just gravy money now. And like, I may as well just keep working because, like, as long as I don't work too much or too many hours in any given week, like,
Yeah.
hell, like I kind of actually like the work. So I pursued originally financial independence because I was like, oh, I don't want to be like, I don't want to have to work. Or what if my company changes and I don't like how it's being run and my job starts sucking. But then when I reached it, I was like, it just became so much more enjoyable knowing that it was my choice and not something that I had to do to support myself.
Yeah, I mean that's the trick, is to being able to do what you want to do because you're interested in doing it, and not necessarily you have to pay the mortgage and pay the car payment, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm curious, that first year of financial independence, like after you got let go from your job, what was that like? Because that had to be somewhat of an adjustment to go from, working a traditional 9 to 5 and kind of having the stress of work to, shifting gears. So walk us through kind of that mental, emotional experience in that first year or so.
Yeah, it was kind of unexpected, the timing of it. And I think I just got stuck in that productivity mindset that I had when I was working, and it just kind of carried over, for better or worse. I mean, I'd always want to do something on the internet, so I started Googling, watching YouTube videos on how to start a blog, and so I started my blog like I think it was early September, so I guess it was like 2 weeks after I quit working. I just went deep into it and was basically working 40 hours a week building out this blog, which, I mean, it was cool. It was fun. I really enjoyed doing it. I don't regret it at all, obviously. And it's still here. It's still, it's still running, still ticking. So, but I realized after about 6 months to a year that I had just replaced one job with another job. And it became a job again because I was putting in so many hours on it. So I'd slowly back off from doing like 3 articles a week to, 1 article a week, 2 articles a month. And eventually, I'm just kind of I'm on maintenance mode now where, once a month I'll sit down and crank out an article just to keep in touch with folks. But it's getting to that, shifting that mindset away from work into like leisure mode. This is the rest of my life, do what I want to do because I enjoy it, not because I need to do something. That took a while to kind of sink in for me. And I think that's a pretty common experience. I've heard 6 to 12 months of adjustment period. And I knew that going into it, and I didn't think it was going to happen to me. And then I look back and I was like, it happened to me. But I guess it, takes a little bit of an obsessive personality to, come up with this financial independence thing and stick to it for a decade and make it happen. So I think I probably fell into that same trap after I quit working. But then, I had that flexibility to say, okay, there's a quantity of working on my blog where it's fun, and then a quantity beyond which it's just more work, which, I could build another big blog and sell it for a few $1,000,000 one day if I wanted to, but just wasn't a goal of mine. So overall, it's just that first year was tricky, but I knew it going into it, and I kind of fell into the trap anyway, and then eventually figured it out.
Yeah. So what about the last few years, the last 2 to 5 years? How has that been for you, mentally, emotionally, kind of like what speed of life do you feel like you're living now?
So I guess, the pandemic obviously has been, I guess, 3 years or so, 2.5, 3 years since it kind of winded down in terms of being a big impact on livelihood. We do a big summer trip every year. So two months or so out of the summer, we'll go travel somewhere big. Europe for the summer, Mexico, South America this past summer. Excuse me. So we've been doing that, for almost a decade now. Other than 2020, we could not do anything that year. But just keeping up with that. We've been doing a little bit more travel, my wife and I, as the kids got older. So that's kind of nice to be able to, get out and do a little bit more stuff, just the two of us, see different things, a little bit different style of traveling than it is with kids. The kids are getting older too, so that, the summer trips are a little bit, easier because they're older, but also more, we can do more things since they are older. It's easier to get around, and we don't have to work around nap times and, angry, unhappy kids because they have to go do stuff and like trying to find French fries and chicken nuggets everywhere, that kind of thing. So it's, that part of kids growing up and being able to do more stuff has been nice. So that's been the biggest shift for us in the last few years, is just being able to finally do a little bit more traveling. That started right before the pandemic as well, but then got derailed because of the pandemic. But so traveling is a big part of what we've been doing. Since I retired, but it's been ramping up. So we're trying to probably end up doing like 3 or 4 months of travel most years going forward. And it's I think it's a balance of like how busy and hectic are we, and how much do we like to relax versus just being on the road and go, because we definitely feel it when we're I think it was last year, there was a period where it was like we were never at home for 1 month straight the whole year. We would always have like a week or two trip somewhere every month, and it kind of got busy. So I think there's an upward limit at some point that we're probably not going to travel more than a certain number of months per year. But that's been the biggest shift, is just kids getting older and being able to do a little bit more stuff independently.
Yeah. So
actually,
speaking
one more
of travel
thing
on your blog, sure.
Yeah, I was just going to add one more thing. Financially, because we've seen our net worth go up as well, I think we have shifted towards kind of a more free-willing effort to spend more money, and part of that is to do more traveling, but just not worrying about money as much, because we don't really have to at all anymore. Because we're still spending about what we had planned on spending, but there's like little things we're just like, oh, it's not worth saving money on that anymore. Why spend time thinking about that? Or spend a few bucks, take the easy way out instead of trying to save money by spending more time. So that's probably the other shift, has just been small financial things of spending a little bit more here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. At some point you have so much money that it like actually, you start to buy back your time with your money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So speaking of the travel, like I read on your blog that you get approximately about $10,000 worth of free travel. So, walk us through a couple of the ways that you're actually doing that.
Sure. So 10,000 per year in free travel, that's kind of a rough estimate of what I figure we probably get each year. And this is some combination of credit card sign-up bonuses. Typically, these are get a new credit card and we'll give you $500 if you spend $2,000 in the first 90 days. So we do a lot of those throughout the year. I'm always switching credit cards to, there's always a new card to put the spending on. We'll make sure we use the right card for the right expenses to get the 5 times the points or whatever. And so most of those points end up paying for travel. We rarely pay cash for any kind of airline flights. So we're flying to Europe and back every other summer, just about, using points. So we're paying maybe $100 a person in taxes, but the bulk of the ticket is free. This summer is a good example. We're going to Poland for the summer, and cash prices are about $1,800 a ticket. I think we've paid maybe like $95 total in between taxes to get there and back per person. So $7,200 of tickets, but we're paying about $350, something like that. So, that right there's a big chunk of that 10,000 per year. I got over 1 million Chase Ultimate Reward points a couple of years ago during the pandemic. Couldn't do anything with them. No traveling was going on. So I bought like $14,000 worth of Airbnb gift cards using my Chase Ultimate Reward points and just cashed out a ton of them. So I had all the Airbnb for last summer, I think the summer before that, and I think this coming summer. I think we're covered, like all of our Airbnb for 5 or 6 months of different Airbnbs. From a handful of credit card signups from Chase. So that's just some examples. I've got Marriott miles, Hilton miles, Choice Privileges miles, all kinds of miles and points on most of the airline programs out there, Chase Ultimate Rewards. It's kind of a hobby. I mean, I don't have to do this, but I just like, for me, it's pretty fun to get something for nothing. We also do the priority pass for when we fly. So we always have a premium credit card that has priority pass on it. So when we fly, we can go to these lounges and, kick back in a nice comfy space and get a beer for free or some dinner or some snacks for free, sit somewhere with internet and outlets instead of, out in the common area in the airport. So long layover, it's not as bad, if you're sitting in a lounge. So that's kind of our travel hacking game, is trying to avoid paying for flights and get a bunch of free hotels. And then, fortunately, been able to get free Airbnbs for the last 2 years now. So, and it certainly helps. I mean, I don't know how much time I spend on it, but it's probably a pretty high hourly earnings rate, given all the free stuff that we get. So.
Yeah, I love using the Chase points to buy Airbnb gifts certificate. Like I've actually never, I'm considering myself like a moderate to, advanced travel hacker, but I never thought of doing that. And that is really smart. And I have a lot of Chase points, so I may copy that move from you. And
it went away in 2022. They had the pay yourself back option where you could buy, it wasn't really published. You could buy Airbnb reservations, but you could also buy the gift cards, and it worked. And then you could reimburse yourself using their pay yourself back function. And once I figured that out, I was like, all right, I'm going to get whatever I think I'm going to use for 2 years of Airbnb. I'm just going to buy all these gift cards and reimburse myself because it's easy. It's easier for me to use that. And I know I use a lot of them. So if it was still here, I'd be cashing out even more that way. It was great.
I missed the opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Well, speaking of kind of like, side hobbies and side hustles, I know you do some other side hustles as well that generate some additional income for you. Could you walk us through kind of what those are and, what kind of money they're bringing in and kind of how much time you're putting into them?
Yeah, sure. I guess the two other things that I do, so I'll just also mention my blog. It produces very low 5 figures of income annually, profit annually. And then the other two sources of income I have are consulting. So I talk to people about how to reach financial independence. And it's a lot of, mostly number heavy, tax heavy. How do I structure my investments to be able to do those Roth conversions we were talking about earlier? What do I do when and how, explaining that kind of thing, walking through things. I charge $185 per hour for that, and usually do probably average out to about 3 or 4 hours per month. So, 1 or 2 clients per month. Again, less than 10,000 per year on that. But it's, again, 4 hours of work per month maximum. Some months I have 6 or 8 hours, but it's pretty rare. And the other thing is trade line sales. And so those are, you get a credit card and you can add an authorized user, and that authorized user gets a benefit on their credit report from having my credit card associated with their credit report. They don't ever see me or my name or how much they see what my credit limit is, but they don't know anything about me really. They just see the credit, I guess the credit report looks like they've had this credit card that I've had forever. Well, they've had it forever too, and they pay their bills on time, and so it helps them boost their credit back up. Um, and there's a company I go through that uses they vet all these people beforehand to make sure they're legitimate people. They have to upload their driver's license information, that kind of thing. And then I just add them onto my credit card for a couple months, take them off, and then they get better credit, and I get paid usually, I think it's like $250 per person. So that adds up to maybe four to 6,000 per year sometimes. It's kind of slowed down the last couple of years, but that's, maybe 15 minutes of work, 30 minutes of work per person to add them and remove them. It's all done through websites. So it's pretty streamlined. And, even if you spend 30 minutes and you're making 250, it's like $500 an hour. I'll take it. Not too bad.
I love it. That's awesome. Okay. Well, as we kind of start to wind the show down, I always like to ask every guest to share a leave behind in the form of one tip, tool, or strategy for fitness and health, one for money, and one for life. So I'd love to hear your tips, tools, and strategies.
Okay. Fitness and health is probably the easiest one. I was thinking about that. You gave me the homework for the show, and so I thought about it. Strava is a little app I have on my phone. It just helps you track, like when you go bike riding or walking or whatever. I don't run, but I walk and hike and go bike riding. It helps me just figure out how long I've been traveling for, average travel speed, and you can kind of see the different routes and like how fast you're going. And I'm the slowest person out there, unfortunately, but it's a good way to keep track of just the data of how far you've gone and your pace and that kind of thing. So that's pretty easy for the fitness one. I use the free version. There's a paid version, but it's called Strava, Strava. Money tools, money hacks. Probably the biggest one is just save early and save often. I think that's the biggest determinant of like how you're going to get wealthy long term is, if you're saving in your 20s, you're going to be a lot wealthier in your 30s than a lot of your peers that just aren't saving. So commit to something early on, make it automated, make it easy to do, and don't worry about it, and just keep doing it. And what was the other thing that the last life? Oh man. Gosh, I would say probably get organized. I feel like I mean, that's kind of a vague concept, but spend some time on like organizational techniques to help you. If you find yourself getting stressed out by keeping track of things, that's what I've seen some people that are like real scatterbrained about stuff and everything's all over the place. Spend a little bit of time researching, like, how do I keep track of things, whether it's a calendar. I use Google Notes to just keep track of stuff, and it's searchable. There's an index in there. You can take pictures on it. It's an app on the phone. You can load it up on your computer too. You can share it. I think there's an equivalent for the Apple environment, Evernote maybe. I don't know, but I use it. Google Calendar. I use it all the time to keep track of stuff. I do a lot of spreadsheets. Very helpful for me just to stay organized and track things and make notes of stuff. And if you're researching something, or you spend some time looking at different products, looking at different trips we're going to take. I have a spreadsheet for that. So if I need to put down some information, I dump it in there. I can do math in there if I need to. I can paste in images, paste in a map, put links in there. It just helps me kind of keep track of things and keep organized. So it's kind of productivity or life hack, I guess. That's helped me out, kind of make it, you can juggle a lot more stuff with less stress if you just kind of can park it somewhere on paper or in the cloud at least, and then come back and visit it later if you need to.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'd agree. I would, my financial house was a freaking mess up until I discovered financial independence. And, you got there to financial independence, like, in 10 years by being organized with your money. So I think that's a really awesome strategy for people, not just with money, but really many areas of life, is just getting organized. So, Justin, is there anything else you would like to cover, or any requests from the audience that you would like to make before we wrap this up?
I'm good. I've been suffering through this, recovering from the flu, so I'm like I'm all talked out. I hope my voice has carried through the whole time. I think I'm still here. I'm powering through it, but no, I'm good. I feel like we've covered a lot of stuff. Just want to thank you for having me on the show today, and glad to share my little bits of knowledge with your viewers and listeners. So glad to be here.
Awesome, brother. And best place for them to connect is your blog, Root of Good. And I believe you're also fairly active on Twitter/X, which
Yes.
your handle there is Root of Good Blog, correct?
Correct. Rootofgood.com for my blog, and then my Twitter handle is rootofgoodblog.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. And hope you feel better soon, and Happy New Year.
All right. Thank you. Same to you.